Talk Shoes.
Recorded live.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to the Genesis Science Fiction Radio Show, a service of the Black Science Fiction Society.com website. My name is William Hayashi. I will be your host for tonight. I'm not in front of the keyboard for a weird reason, but I think this is a July 4th. Is this the 14th? Yeah, I think it is. Welcome to the July 14th episode or edition, and our special guest today is, I haven't had a chance to talk too much to her, but it's Chasitie Goodman, and she's an educator and an author, and well, why don't we just dive right in? Welcome to the show, Chasitie. How are you today?
Oh, thank you. Thank you so much for your welcome. I'm great. How are you?
I am well. Chicago, it was kind of overcast, a little bit of drizzly today, so we didn't have that unrelenting heat, so it was a pretty happy day. Where are you coming to us from?
I'm coming from Nashville, so a little bit overcast here, too. Not too bad, though. Unfortunately, I guess, or fortunately, depending on how you look at it, we got some of the heat, so.
It wasn't bad, though, was it? Like that tornado kind of weather or anything?
No, we had that, I think, yesterday. We had that real torrential kind of rain to come through, so it was easy going today. Nothing major.
Right. Okay. And then did you grow up in that area, or are you a transplant?
Actually, I am a native Tennessean. I have not always been in Nashville, per se, but I've pretty much been here my whole life in Tennessee. So, yeah, I'm a native.
And would you say that you had a pretty good, childhood? Was there any weird traumas or anything? I mean, the reason why I ask is because people kind of want to know how you became who you are today. In terms of what the skill sets that you have now. Also, being an author, I'm wondering maybe how early did some of your writing talents start to emerge?
Oh, wow. My writing talent was pretty much evident very early on. My mom was very instrumental in that she taught me to write when I was about 3. So I was writing things, and I had a pretty good memory. So that combined with an imagination of a precocious 3-year-old kid, we started writing stories. I did anyway. Started writing stories fairly early on. In terms of my childhood, it was not traumatic. It was very much the ideal childhood, if I do say so myself. In fact, with my first book, Could I Really Be President? It was that childhood that I leaned on to actually write the book. In fact, it's deeply personal. I wrote my first book in honor of my grandmother. She was really the spearhead for this project. And kind of the background of the story is my grandmother was in her last days as Mr. Obama was kind of making his pursuit of the presidency. So the night that Mr. Obama got elected, I don't know if you guys remember this, but his face was tear-streaked because he had just, in fact, lost his grandmother. And it was kind of like, oh, my gosh, she just did miss it. And so while we were, my family and I were in, the living room watching this, we felt him, like in a very real way, because my own grandmother had just passed away and didn't get to really see that pursuit of the presidency and then him ultimately winning. Something that in her lifetime she would have thought to be impossible. So, yeah, my childhood was good.
Well, that's pretty cool. And then, to start, to know your letters and to start writing at the age of 3, obviously you probably didn't put together a Pulitzer, at the age of 3, but what kinds of stories were you thinking up in your head? Oh, and Jarvis just corrected me. I did get back to the keyboard. It's the July 15th edition, not the 14th. Anyway, go ahead. I mean, what kinds of imagination did you have at that age, you know, when you started, well, at least when you started putting your own stories together in your head?
Well, the great thing about being on this platform with the Black science fiction family is that a lot of those science fiction elements have kind of always been around. And I think with children especially, we are not judging those elements of science fiction, the paranormal, the supernatural. So a lot of those elements would be in my stories, you know, people that could fly and things that we deem impossible that, you know, in science fiction terms are not impossible. So I would say that a lot of those elements were in my early stories. And then, of course, when I went to school, the writing helped me to cope in that I wasn't real popular in school, just to be completely honest with you. I wasn't the most popular kid in the school, so that writing took the form of poetry and, you know, little things like that really kind of helped me get through the school day.
Like a coping mechanism.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Oh, yes. And I still think that everybody, young or old, should have a journal to, you know, jot things down and help you remember where you are. And that's something that I incorporate into my classroom as an educator, is that journaling and that constant exercise of writing.
Yeah, one of the reasons why I tend to avoid journals is because, you know, for a lot of the things I would write about, the statute of limitations hasn't passed. So you have to be careful, because if you lose that, then, you know, trouble will follow. That's mostly a joke. Mostly a joke. Okay, so you're journaling, you're doing some poetry, you're doing, you know, basically your personal escapism is in your writing. By the way, did you keep any of your earlier stuff? And if you did, I mean, do you ever go back and refer to it and see where your mind was at that time? Or do you do that by following along, going back in your journals to see where your mind was at any given time?
Oh, that's a good question. My mom would probably kill me because in my move here to Nashville, a lot of those really, really early writings have gotten kind of lost, I guess.
Lost, okay.
Yeah. But things from my early teens, even a couple of years ago when I was in my early 20s and things like that, yeah, I still have those. And I can go back and go, man, I wrote that. Yeah. Absolutely.
And you've got the one book out, Could I Really Be President, which went on sale at the beginning of this year. Were there things that you were writing and issues that you were dealing with that kind of got you? You mentioned your grandmother, obviously, but were there did you have the beginnings of this in you early on, or was this something that went bam, it hit you because of, you know, this remarkable election of President Obama?
With regards to that, a lot of it was just, like you said, the remarkable election itself and reflecting on my grandmother. I think one day I was really just kind of sitting down and thinking about what an inspiration she has been to my life. And I have an incredible family, an incredible group of people behind me that kind of always stand there with me. And when you lose one of them, the way that you keep them alive, of course, is constantly referring back to them and, you know, just keeping that memory with you all the time. And I think that they stay with you. I don't think, I know they stay with you. They stay alive in that sense. So when I first wrote the book, that's what I was thinking about. I was thinking about my grandmother and how we would have talked about this and what that conversation would have sounded like had she actually made it. And to take that a step further, thinking about the kids, because I am a teacher, thinking about the children, what I really wanted to do was annihilate that idea of impossibility that is kind of lurking around often with our youth. And I wanted to annihilate that idea that something could not be done or something was impossible, just like the idea maybe in my grandmother's head and many others at that time was, oh, no, we could never have an African-American president. Like, that can't happen. So when Obama came in, President Obama did, he just not only won once but twice. So just in case
both
you
by
weren't sure
landslide.
the first, yes. So just in case you weren't sure the first time, you know, we're going to make sure you know that, oh, yes, now it's very possible. Anything that you think of is very, very possible.
Well, and remember now, there's a new generation of kids coming up who have never had an all-white president, who have never not known a black president. And imagine how that's, you know, they're going to start out, you know, kids who are in school now, 5, 6, 7, 8 years old now, who have not known anybody but Barack Obama as president. And then, Lord willing, the next thing that's going to happen is, you know, we're going to have a woman president. And that's going to be a first, too. So there's a certain sociology and a culture, you know, certain things in culture that are going to be are manifest because of the things that go on around us. And to your credit, you know, for you to jump on the fact that this, not only is this significant, but it's historical in a way, not like, oh, he's the first black man, but historical in excuse me, allergies are killing me, in the fact that kids, you know, and even young adults, you know, okay, look at the two examples we've had in the past almost 15 years. We've had, you know, we've had that mope, George W. Bush, and then you immediately contrast him with Barack Obama, and the differences are quite striking. And in terms of sociology and in terms of American culture. And let me ask you this about your book, Could I Really Be President, which is available on, for those of you, it's on Amazon. Just search for
Amazon.
Yeah. Search for Chasitie Goodman, and that's Chasitie, Goodman. Goodman is spelled like normal. And is this aimed for toward young adults, children? I mean, what's the age group that you would say would benefit most from this book?
It's universal. I wrote the book to spark the conversation about confidence and identity. So this is going to be for elders, for grandparents, for teenagers, for mothers, for fathers. It's a family experience. I want a family, whatever your family looks like, right, to sit down and have that conversation about things that you thought were impossible, and then after you read the book to kind of share some of your own experiences of things that you thought were impossible, out of your reach, or even experiences that you thought you couldn't get through that you actually did get through. So I wrote it for a whole gamut of experiences. And yes, like you said, it's on Amazon. Matter of fact, it's on iTunes Books now. It's on Barnes & Noble. You can get it there. And then, of course, if you go to my website, seegoodwork.com, you can also get more information about the availability of it there also.
You know that if people want to find it, they'll find it.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I just
because I know everybody wants to get on here and they want to make sure that everybody can find them no matter what, which is the main challenge to all of us who write and publish, because it's difficult getting your work above the noise of the background, and you know, self-publishing is good and bad. It's good because it lowers the bar to you getting what you want to get done and out on the market. But there are so many people like us who are doing the same thing, and there are so many millions and millions of books there that it is difficult to try to distinguish yourself and get people to find you. You know, I tell people I'm the only Japanese Negro lesbian living in a man's body writing speculative fiction in Chicago just so that they remember my ass. You know, you have to have a gimmick. You have to have a hook. Well, because it is difficult. I mean, all joking aside, I think that's the biggest challenge to all of us who write these days. And the pool of people who read is much, much smaller. You know, it's not the way it was, you know, maybe a generation ago.
I like many of the points that you've been bringing up about, you know, the sociology of the students and then how often they read. I think that, you know, studies have said that this is the most reading generation to date because the kids are inundated with social media and posting, so they're constantly reading text. I just don't think that they're reading it, like you said, in the way that we were before because the sociology is changing. What I wanted to accomplish with this book and my writings is to bring people together as a collective because, yes, President Barack Obama is the only president that these kids 8 and younger have ever known, and I'm going to do you one even, you know, bigger than that. When you look at some of the 9th and 10th graders that we have in our educational system right now in our schools, President Barack Obama is the only president they remember. Like they don't remember who came before him. They've only known him. And what's good about that is not necessarily the politics of it, but just him holding that space and having them in this lifetime kind of understanding that, this is different. You know, this never happened before. And we get to be that generation, I think, of writers, of teachers, and I take that personally on myself to help them inhibit that you can do it, like go after this, and be confident in whatever identity that you find and take root in that identity and then go out and get what you're looking for. Absolutely.
Yeah, it is a very, very mixed bag, and oftentimes it looks like you need to almost be hit by lightning or win the lottery in order to capture the imagination of a nation about your book. You know, we had 50 Shades of Grey because it was porn for housewives, and it got a huge leg. Well, it is. It's porn for housewives. It got a huge leg up. It's very poorly written, but they get to read it because everybody's reading it. You can read it on the bus. It's not like reading Playboy or Playgirl or any other kind of, you know, sex-related publication. And you know, there's that titillation factor, you know. Although it is poorly, I'm not gonna lie. I couldn't even get past the first chapter. Well, I want to see what's popular because tapping into, it's important in terms of marketing to try to figure out how to tap into the, you know, kind of like the pulse of America's readers. I mean, more women read than men. Women tend to read more fiction than men. Men tend to read nonfiction. I mean, there's all of these kind of demographics, all of these you know, studies about who reads what, how many books are read a year, all these things that you look at. And as a writer, you say, okay, well, how am I going to fit into this? How am I going to win, you know, my segment of the market if that's at all possible? So, but you've got one that I think. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to ask, is that something that you think about when you sit down and you know, embark upon something that you're writing?
No, you know what I do? I think about telling a story that nobody else has ever told. You know, the conventional wisdom is, oh, there are no new plots out there. Well, I get to find one every time I write. So obviously there are new plots out there. There are stories yet to be told that can capture people's imaginations. It's getting harder because when you talk about Star Wars. Star Wars has a crap load of books out there, you know, that many authors have contributed to. Same thing for Star Trek. I will tell you with my dumbass self, I have probably about 30 Star Trek books, too, before I quit, saying, boy, you know, you're spending your money and it's not helping you any. And then when I looked at what it took to write a Star Trek novel, you know, you have to, you know, you have to get certain permissions. You have to abide by certain writing and plot guidelines and things like that. And that wasn't for me. I fell into my first plot. Okay, my first plot was something that had never been done before. Do you know anything about it? I'll just mention it just briefly because I don't want to, this is your time. But I wrote a trilogy that tells a story of what happens in the United States of America when the country finds out that African Americans have been secretly living on the moon, on the backside of the moon, since before Neil Armstrong arrived up there. Okay,
nice.
And so nobody has ever done anything like that. Whenever we've talked about African Americans, separatism, making your own way, all of those sorts of things, you know, they basically have been earthbound. And, you know, the difficulty with the idea of doing it on Earth, you either have to do it kind of like from a revolutionary standpoint, like Sam Greenlee's The Spook Who Sat by the Door.
Oh, yeah.
Or Edwin Corley wrote a book called Siege, where a black general kind of manipulated the army to get a whole lot of black soldiers in certain divisions, and then they tried to take over Manhattan. Well, neither of those they're not, you know, maybe The Spook Who Sat by the Door would be good for disrupting America, but you can't win. You can't win. It's like these crazy-ass gun nut crackers who say, oh, I got 237 guns, all this ammo and stuff in my house in case the government tries to take over. Well, you know, the government's not going to knock on your door with anything but a bomb. You know, we saw what happened in Iraq. What makes you think you're not going to get a missile up your butt? So there's the silliness of writing a story that's completely fantasy for me. And then there's the seriousness of writing a story that has all the elements of today's culture and saying, this is a story that I want to tell because nobody has ever thought of this before. And I've been very lucky. I will say that the way I crafted the story was almost maybe 80% luck, because I had never written a book before. And I certainly had never written anything like this. So, again, you know, my challenge is like yours, trying to get visibility, trying to get people to at least find out who I am. And it's tough. One of the reasons why I like this show for the people I interview is it's a 2-hour interview. It's a 2-hour conversation about you, about what made you do what you did, what made, you know, how did you get to where you are? And then for you can link to it so that people who are interested in you are going to hear about who you are in a way that they could not hear about anywhere else, unless you did a seminar or a reading or something at a library, and they could spend that time with you. But you can't. It's so hard to do that. I've done radio and I've done TV about what I've written, and you're lucky if you get 6 minutes.
Wow.
It's extraordinary if you get 12 minutes. Well, remember, they got commercials. They want to keep it going. They don't want to linger. They don't, you know, and you know good and damn well whoever's interviewing you didn't read your work. Okay? They just don't. I admit I didn't read your work because I didn't know about the interview, but I do try to look up. You know, I look up the reviews. I look at what other people say. But it's tough, you know, because for 2 hours you want to be able to expose the intellect and the life of behind the work, and whether they did a movie, a TV show, a novel, short stories, music, or anything. That's the essence of what I like to do. So when I ask you, you know, about one of the things that's important to me is, like, when you look at your book, it's got a great cover. Okay, this is going to be a great library book, and this is going to be a great book to have in schools, you know, as a kind of like a dream resource for kids. You take teenage kids and think about it. Could I really be president? Well, hell yeah, you could really be president. Barack Obama was president, and Barack Obama was biracial. You know, he was half black, half white. And they go, really? Yeah, and they go, wow, that's like Tiger Woods, you know, and so there's a lot of sociology, connective sociology associated with what you've done, and I dare say we'll probably see more like it. But being able to sit back and talk about what's happened in this country, you know, to make that possible. In 2004, we had the Democratic National Convention on at a restaurant. We had brought in a big screen TV, and you know, Barack Obama gave the speech. That was the speech. I stood up and said in a restaurant full of white folks, I said, that's going to be our next president. And they said, why don't you sit your ass down and shut up? Because he's black, you know. So that was, I mean, that's a remarkable thing. And I like the fact that it sparked you from a historical perspective, you know, because you wanted to talk about, well, my mother missed it, okay?
Yeah.
But I want to talk about all of these other things that this revolves around. And tell us a little bit about how you crafted the book. I mean, would you consider it kind of, does it have a fictional cast to it, or is it more talking about the present history that made this possible?
It definitely has a fictional tint to it, definitely. And what I wanted to do was reimagine myself as a child having gone through this experience. So for Chasitie Goodman, I'm a girl. I'm a female. But we often look at our boys, and there's so much against them, like in school, in general. Everybody wants to say that the boy is the worst performing part of a classroom. So that was my motivation for choosing a boy. And I'm looking at, you know, somebody who's going to mirror Barack Obama, and that they're both male. And I wanted to write this story because, again, my grandmother spearheaded this thing. So I wanted to write it and reimagine it as if she were here to go through this with me. And so the conversations in the book, the settings in the book are things that I would have imagined that would have happened to me if I was a kid, as this had happened, you know, and my grandmother was actually there to see it and go through it with me. My family celebrates everything with food. Like, it doesn't even take that much at all. It doesn't take, hi, whoever that is. It doesn't take that much to have us, you know, cook up a good meal and have a good conversation around whatever's going on. So I really wanted my audience to kind of viscerally go through that experience with me and say, oh, man, like, this is what we do. This is how we celebrate something. This is the conversation that we would have had. So that's kind of what spearheaded me writing the book from that point of view. And when you look at our youth nowadays, oh, my gosh, they fascinate me. Like, I tell people I'm a teacher, and they go, oh. And then they're like, well, what grade do you teach? And primarily I teach ninth graders, but I teach everything else, too. Like, I have a class of, 10th, 11th, 12th graders, somewhere off in there. I even teach people in college. I teach college English as well. And every time I step into that classroom, it is literally like a science fiction classroom. It's like a science fiction movie, rather, I should say. I mean, there's...
Well, how is that?
Well, there's the paranormal is happening. There's supernatural things happening. There's a kid that speaks up that never speaks up, and you're like, oh, I can't believe this. There's drama. There's horror. There is suspense. There's magic when it's all said and done. Because these are human beings that we're dealing with. And I'm watching them deal with things in a way that even I didn't when I was going through school. And I'm sure the generation before me watched me go through situations that they never thought, they could before. I mean, I think about my grandmother who told me all of these stories of history and culture, and then to see me as a young adult be actually old enough to go into a voting pool, you know what I'm saying, a voting booth, and see somebody that kind of looks like us. That's supernatural. That is something straight from science fiction, at least in the way that I understand it. And so when you have people like Octavia Butler and Samuel Delaney to say, hey, African Americans, we are science fiction. Like not even to look at the stories, but to just say our experience is science fiction at its best. At its best. Yeah, absolutely. And when the kids get the book and the families get the book, I want all of that to kind of to be in the back of their minds and just sit and enjoy this. This is a book that does celebrate that first black president, but it also keeps you mindful of things that you never thought were possible are possible, regardless of whatever the world looks like for you at the moment.
Right.
Which is, if you look at our youth, that's vastly changing. Vastly.
And so as you go through, obviously this has only been on the market since January. What kind of feedback have you gotten from people who have read the book?
I've gotten really good feedback from them. They really love it for their children. And to be honest with you, it's a lot of what I kind of hope. They're getting to sit down and look at this from a reflective point of view from themselves and say, I remember where I was. I remember what this felt like, kind of going through the election. I even had one person tell me recently, like, this is so needed at this particular moment. I had somebody, I think, on Amazon put that this was a great book for kids. So, it's good. It's good. I'm proud. I really am.
And when you were writing it, did you have someone as kind of like your confidant, somebody who helped you out with putting it together?
Oh, absolutely. Absolutely. I don't think we ever do anything by ourselves in this life, whether we realize it or not. But my parents were there, of course, every step of the way going, oh, you need to put this out immediately. And they were kind of kicking the butt to make sure that, I was on top of my game and getting it out. My brother was there with me. My mom and my brother, I think, were at this thing 1,000,001 times. And then, of course, as I think in my acknowledgments, I have there, some of my teachers. One, of course, is Miss Blue and some of those people there that kind of looked things over for me and kept me mindful of things that I may have forgotten or not seen. And so collectively, definitely, they made sure that I put out the best product that I absolutely could. Absolutely.
Yeah. For those of you who have just tuned in and missed the beginning of the show, we're talking to Chasitie Goodman. She's an educator and an author of a book that you can find on Amazon called Could I Really Be President? And if you're going to do a search, it's Chasitie Goodman. Take a look at it. And I think the idea is great. I admit I haven't read it, but I gotta write stuff. Yeah, no, I know. Hey, I just met you today. Just learned about you earlier today. So, but it's intriguing because I do want to take a look at it and see if it's I would like to. I take care of a school and it's an elementary school. So when you're looking at pre-K through 8, this might be something that's right up their alley. So I will take a look at it. When you think about the fact that you wrote a book and you got it published, are you thinking about the possibility of producing more work, more published work like that?
Oh, yes.
And do you have other projects in mind already?
Yes. But here's where that support system comes in. They help me to say, okay, Chasitie, you wrote this one book. Let's learn from the process in totality. They keep me from getting, as Will Smith said in The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, I'm feeling froggy, I want to jump. They keep me from jumping too fast and learning from the process of this book and everything I need to be mindful of so that when I put the next project out, it'll be even, or just as smooth as this one has been. So, yeah. And then also, I do a lot of blogging.
Okay.
Yeah, that corresponds with it when I really just need to get something out. So along with the book, you can go to seegoodwork.com and kind of follow some of the blogs that I've written, one of which was some of the rationale that's behind the book, Could I Really Be President in the Classroom, and where I was. I'm not going to say when I wrote the book, but when I really knew that I had to get serious about, putting my work out.
I kind of want to circle back to something that you just mentioned. What are some of the things that stood out, to you in the process of creating the book? Because you said, well, I want to step back, I want to look at this, I want to look at that. Are you talking about kind of collating and kind of looking closely at what it took to make it and where you should apply your efforts more seriously or something like that? Or, what kind of lessons are you talking about that you learned in the publication of your first book that stood out to you that much?
Well, again, like I said, this has always been a personal journey for me. I didn't really set out, like, I'm going to write a children's book for this group of children. That, I didn't really set it out that way. It was from inspiration, pure inspiration. So as I grew as a person, I think the book grew. And I wanted to make sure that integrity was always there, that this was a story about family and identity, and about how courageous it is for a kid to have their mind blown. Like I'm in education, so I get to see a lot of those kind of aha moments for kids, and it's the most magical things that you could possibly think of. So when I was reading the book back to myself, that's what I wanted to feel like. Like this kid through this journey, this child, as he's going through this with his family, is having this aha moment. And every page, you get to get a little bit more clarity of what that aha moment looked like for him, that inspiration.
Okay.
Yeah, absolutely. So when I was going through the process, that's what I wanted to stay true to. And I did kind of step out of, what market was this going to reach. Of course, that's always important, and that's why you have a team of people around you, like I mentioned before, my teachers, my family that were there to keep me mindful of those things. But I just wanted to stay in that integrity of it, of that, what that felt like for me in writing it.
No, I get you, because, the first time you do anything like this, it is a pretty hefty learning process, because not only are you trying to craft your story and figure out how to do that, everybody's I've talked to, they all have different kinds of processes that work, processes that work for them. I have my way of doing, what I do. Some people, they have special music playing, or some people only work at a certain time of night, or some people have a tough time writing because they may have a family, and you put a job and a family and fatigue and trying to have enough rest. You put all that in the mix, and sometimes it's a very difficult process to make successful. So, I have more friends who have started books and not finished them than people who I've met, like on BlackScienceFictionSociety.com, who have actually completed their work, because it's not easy. So, I was kind of dancing around the edge of what kinds of things did you learn to make your process work? Like for me, I figured out if I treat writing like a part-time job, I will finish a book. And my books are long. They're like 220,000 words are the first 3 books. Each one of those is 220,000 words. That's pretty long. That's like 500 pages. But having said that, being able to sit down and do that, nobody wants to write a 500-page book on purpose because that's a little long for most people to read. And I would never have finished it if I hadn't figured out, well, you know what? Every night at 10 o'clock, stop what you're doing and start writing or editing. And so if you do that for 3 or 4 hours, you've got a part-time job and you will get it done. So in the process of you learning your particular process, what worked for you? How did you keep at it? Because not everybody gets to finish a book that they start.
Well, first and foremost, I would say, like I said, I had that great support behind me. Second of all, and I allude to this on my blog, which, like you're saying, is a little bit more difficult to keep up on a regular basis because of just, my grandmother used to say, it's a woman's work is never done. So, like,
right.
I'm finding 27 hours in a 24-hour day sometimes, literally.
And my saying is life happens.
Yes.
Because you can't always count on smooth sailing. You remember that old joke? The old joke is, how do you make God laugh? Tell him your plans.
Yes.
Exactly.
Yes, I know exactly what you're talking about. But I remember this one particular time. I was sitting in my classroom, and this particular classroom was kind of rough. And I had a kid look at me while looking for something and say, well, where is our book? I thought you wrote books, And I'm like, wow, way to kick my butt. You know what I'm saying? Way to whip me into shape.
Right.
And so that kind of stuff keeps me aware, hyper aware that my work is necessary. Like I can't even play with it. As far as the process goes, I'm a music lover. And I found out that I'm not alone in that. The author, Blythe, let me make sure I'm saying her name correctly, but the director that did Love and Basketball, the movie, which I think is a beautiful movie. But Love and Basketball, let me make sure I'm saying her name correctly. I met her, actually. Yeah, Blythewood, I'm correct. Gina Prince Blythewood. She says that when she's writing, she loops music in her headphones, and that kind of sets the tone for it. And I've also heard Shonda Rhimes say that she does the same thing. And that's a big part of my process is kind of what music do I hear in the background. With this story, the inspiration was there where I didn't rely so much on the music because, again, when you have somebody like my grandmother, that's a whole lifetime worth of inspiration. I could have wrote that, to running water. But when I'm thinking about, like, the blogs and everything else that kind of go along with that, the music definitely kind of puts me in a writing mood. Most definitely.
Well, and see that it's different for everybody because some people say, oh, I have to have it quiet. Otherwise, it's too distracting, or, oh, no, I can't listen to music, et cetera, et cetera. So, it's interesting. Somebody typed in a question and said, in which ways are you conveying that magic in your writing as a means to do the impossible? And impossible is in non-air quotes. It's in actually real quotes. And then their follow-up is, where do you feel the magic emanates from? So, when you hit that sweet spot of getting your story, you're getting your story down, where do you think that originates? I mean, obviously you have the influences of what you're writing about and how that relates to you, your family, and stuff like that. But what's kind of like the sweet spot of getting when the story starts to really flow?
Cool. Again, for me, it's that inspiration. With some of the things that I write that are not necessarily like this particular book, but when that music hits there, I'll start to see the story. And I really don't know how to explain it other than that. I'll see the story. And it happened with this one, too. I could see the characters. I could see where they were standing. And it's like I can see everything that they're saying and what's happening. And that's how I get it down. When I'm in that space of writing, I am not thinking about anything else but what I see and feel. I'm not thinking about, the end game. I'm not thinking about the how, because when I'm in that space of inspiration and love for whatever it is I'm creating, then the how doesn't faze me. It really doesn't. I know that sounds real like real poetic, but it really doesn't. And after I kind of get that cleaned up to sound like and look like what I want it to sound like and look like, then I go after the how. And I think that with self-publication now, there's so many different ways. And watch this. There are some things that I will tweet out or that I will use social media for, because as published authors, you can always get published.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? There's always that audience there for it. I think that when we look at even Beyonce's Lemonade, throughout the whole movie that she made, there is this previously unknown poet that is woven, in between the music videos. And guess what everybody did? First thing they do, go to social media, see if she posted anything, and go look up the transcript of that work. So I think that that's why it was important to me to both have the blog that I write and then the accompanying children's book. So if you're not catching me if you don't know I'm on Amazon, maybe that you read the blog and something catches your eye and then you go find the rest of my work. So it kind of works in tandem with one another.
Yeah, and then when you think in terms of like your next books along the way, because you said that you had science fiction and fantasy elements in your storytelling from very, very early on.
Yeah.
Do you think that maybe your next works will be more in that genre rather than like kind of a sociological speculative fiction, but not quite fiction that you wrote this time?
Wow.
Hey, look, I asked a good question. I got 2 hours to fill here. I'm going to be questioning your butt off. I'm giving you more than 12 minutes, But I mean, seriously, because, when you think about what you did the first time, okay, that's out of the way. And then you've described yourself as a child with that kind of imagination where you had the fantasy and the science fiction type elements in your storytelling already. I'm just wondering if that's going to probably come out more so maybe in some of the works that you have planned for the future.
Yes.
Or have you even given it any thought? I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but I'm just...
No. You're not. I'm just kind of thinking through your question. I think that when I get inspired to write something and it comes out, I don't think necessarily in terms of genre. I just think in terms of, again, like, whatever I see and whatever I feel. However,
the story that you want to tell, right?
Right.
More so than just trying to assign it a genre. Yeah. Okay.
I do. I genuinely think in terms of, wow, this is what I'm feeling. This is what I'm seeing. But I tell you this. Some of the things that inspire me most are what I see in the world. And as far as I'm concerned, that's as science fiction as you can get. Look around us. I mean, if you listen to the news, some of this stuff is like, how do we make this up? How do you do this? And when you have that kind of inspiration, I think you're bound to get some of those types of elements in your storytelling, that supernatural, that mystical, that how is this possible that you wrote it this way, or that this character looks this way or feels that way?
Well,
definitely.
Those elements resonate with a lot of people. They resonate with kids. I mean, look at kids. They see Peter Pan for the first time, and there's somebody who flies, you know, or they see a witch who can conjure up spells. You know, Wizard of Oz. Okay, they see Wizard of Oz, and you know, so the visuals and the actuality that you know, the presentation of the supernatural, maybe even horror if they watch Frankenstein or something like that. You know, those elements fuel not only our imagination, but also our entertainment for this culture. I mean, every single comic book person has, well, not every single one, because I'm going to have about 238 people listening to this as a podcast going, they don't have enough black folks in the movies. And you know what? My answer to that is, you know, you want black folks in the movies, go make your own damn movie. You know, because white folks are only going to do what makes them money. Black folks are only going to do what makes. Do you think Tyler Perry likes to be in that dress? Now I have a theory, but I'm not going to say it out loud. You know, but you go for what, you know. There's two components of creativity in our entertainment. One is obviously financially driven. Okay, what's going to bring in money? Because there have been some crap-ass, well, like the comic book movies. There have been some crap-ass comic book movies that have made a ton of money just because people went to see it, because it was familiar, because of the buzz, because of the subject matter, and they are not particularly well-done stories. And then there's the creative part that actually sometimes gets to sneak in. You know, you see more of the independent movie producers or movie studios doing something every now and then that's creative or that's different, that is worthy of, that is buzzworthy. You know, I don't think much of the Blair Witch Project, but it was so new. It was so new. Nobody had ever seen anything like that before. And on that level, it was an interesting watch, because all of a sudden you go, well, this is completely different from anything anybody's ever seen before. And as a filmmaker, to me, it's always interesting to me to see what people are going to glom onto. I made the jokes about, you know, 50 Shades of Grey, all right, you know, but the jokes are true. It's not great literature, and it was a terrible movie, but it made a lot of money. So you have to, for me, I take that back. I want to take away the you have to. One of the things that I do is when I write a story, I want to write a good story. But I admit that I have enough ego in me and enough need as an artist that I would like to be discovered in the common culture as buzzworthy. Okay, I would love for all of a sudden, you know, they say, how about you know, this being a mini-series on Sci-Fi Channel. And I go, oh man, I would give a lot for my work to be there. But on the other hand, am I going to prostitute myself to write a half-ass story merely because it's going to be popular? I'm not at that point yet, but that's not to say that a certain amount of desperation is going to push me in that direction. So these are all the things that we all have to. I think all of these elements play a part, or at least they're dancing around in the back of our heads. So, like when you go to craft your next story, you know, I would imagine that you're going to say, yeah, I want to write a story that's uniquely mine, but then you don't want it so out there or so unrelatable that nobody else wants to read it. So it's kind of like a trade-off.
It is, but, you know, I did my college. This is how I even got to know that the Black Science Fiction Society even existed. I was doing my thesis on Black science fiction because, you know, I was watching the television and there was Tavis Smiley had a guest on. Joe Morton had just gotten picked up for some show or another, and he made a comment about Richard Pryor saying that all the black people get killed in, you know, horror movies or science fiction movies because nobody.
In the first 5 minutes.
Right. Nobody imagines us And here's how deep this was to me. As a person, as an educator, as a person of color in this country, nobody sees us as useful in the future. Nobody sees us being there. Nobody envisions us as having any type of importance, okay?
Mm-hmm.
That was science fiction to him. So watch this. My grandmother is born circa 1920. The stories that she tells me circa 1920, that generation that survived that is science fiction to me. It's fascinating. And that in itself has some of that, you know, you're talking about aliens, you know, that are co-parenting and co-creating with human beings, and let's say Octavia Butler's adulthood rights series, right? Well, to me, having listened to my grandmother's experience, I put that in the same boat. It's that outrageous to me. But she paved the way for my parents to then come in the 70s to walk away. I mean, get this. Now, think about it. As people of color, to go from slavery to my grandmother's generation to now my parents in the 1970s with bell-bottoms and afros. And just the visualization of the 1970s is science fiction. I don't know if you guys got an opportunity to see, like, the Black Panther special that was done on PBS, but they said of the Black Panthers and the people of that time, we looked cool. We looked like superheroes. It didn't even matter what we were doing. We looked cool. You know, that is like, wow, otherworldly at that particular time. Then you have the 1980s to come around. This is when I was growing up, and I grew up with orange and pink and brown and purple monsters as my friends. They were helping me learn how to count and how to read and how to say words. Monsters, get this now. And then we have hip-hop to come in with the shiny suits, and we're making millions and millions of dollars. And this type of music and culture has now transcended to where it's everywhere. It's American culture. We can't even solely claim that anymore. So that is the way we have to not have us in something that is science fiction in terms of a book or a movie or a play or anything because we are not useful in the future. That idea is dead. Does that make, like, it doesn't even exist anymore. There is nothing that is impossible anymore. We've done that. We've proven that we're useful in the future as people of color. We've proven time and time and again that not only can we be put to the test with anything that is thrown at us, but things that we do and the contributions that we make outlast whatever generation came before us, and we stand on that and make something even more outrageous and outlandish and fantastic. The cell phone itself, it was impossible. I mean, I remember the razors. Do y'all remember those? Oh, my God.
Oh, yeah.
Like, you had to have a razor, and then to see an iPhone makes, like, why were y'all going crazy over this? You know? And to see how we've kind of moved ourselves into this Jetsons-type era to where even I heard on the news, I think it was yesterday or the day before on NPR that, you know, in the 1970s or in the era where the fist came about, you know, no longer should we be using the fist. We should just hold up a cell phone. I mean, that's how out there our generations are. And I think that we will get to a point in time to where we really do transcend some of the issues even that we're seeing today. And what I hope to do is make work that reflects that, because that's what I see in my everyday work that kind of reflects. Mm-hmm.
There's no doubt that American urban culture pretty much rules the earth in terms of entertainment culture. Okay, you know, rap music is everywhere. You have everything from, preteen Japanese girls doing rap and things like that. and we have a lot of people complaining about the appropriation of our culture by non-black people, and you have to expect that. I mean, we liked basketball before we were running basketball, or baseball, sports, all kinds of things. And so for you to talk about wanting to exploit, and I don't mean that in a bad word, I mean that in a perfectly good way, exploit the realities of African American culture as it exists not only in this country but probably globally in your storytelling makes perfect sense, because first of all, it's what you're doing is not really a black thing. That's mainstream. It's just that we don't get to they don't let us play in the mainstream very often. And when they do, it's so someone else can make money. I mean, Chris Rock makes the joke, but it's not really a joke. He said Shaq is rich, but the guy who signed Shaq's checks is wealthy. And so, it would be nice if we could not have the best of what we produce, the best of what we invent, the best of what we get the rest of the world excited about it. It would be great if we could retain that and retain the financial remuneration that comes along with that. You look at radio. Radio is probably one of the most it builds more wealth for music than any other medium, because you can only have so many people in an arena. Excuse me. You can only download to your phone, certain songs, things like that. But if Clear Channel, and I forget who the other one is, there's two companies that they handle 98% of the music in this country. Okay, yeah, you have Spotify, you have this, you have you have all of these other breakout companies, but most people listen to the radio. They want to hear what's new. They want to hear some news with it. They want to hear this, and this. And so you have two huge white mega conglomerates that are controlling our music, that are making so much money off of our music. And the reason why is because we lack the infrastructure to control our own intellectual property. Sorry, I had to take a drink. So when you write a book, okay, you write a book and it's a black themed book in terms of what goes on in it, not so much like, it's not Black Power or anything like that. It just happens to have African Americans in it, and it's, maybe the story elements might be uniquely African American. I write a series of books, and they're about our culture of today, but the protagonists in my book are African Americans. Well, is that going to be sustainable financially? Is somebody going to, I told a joke. My first book, has them discovering black folks on the moon. And I had HarperCollins looked at it. I haven't even pushed it back in that direction because my agent died. And then things happen. And then who was that? Oh, Warner Brothers looked at the first book. Somebody at Warner Brothers looked at my first book. And so, we've got technologically advanced African Americans on the moon. Should we option this? And the answer is hell no, because what if this crazy Japanese Negro in his third book has these black folks come and kill all the white people in America? See, Warner Brothers is going to consider that a bad investment, so they're not going to take that chance. So I say all this to say that there is a cultural uphill climb for us to get work into the mainstream in a way that will benefit us and not make somebody else rich. You know what I'm saying?
I think that we're getting there. I don't think that it's anything that's going to be, and then maybe it will be, because I look at it like this. You have someone like Issa Rae, and Issa Rae for you know, she may not be what we see on TV now, because she may not have, and then again, maybe she is. I don't know. But if you're familiar with Issa Rae, with Awkward Black Girl or Awkward, you know, that her little web series that came on was wildly popular, and then HBO picked her up, because what she didn't do was wait on somebody to tell her yes. And I think that a lot of us are doing that now, and a lot of our youth are responding to it, and then you know, just American culture in general is responding to it, because nobody has to tell you can do something. And I think that with my first book, again, it's about tackling the impossibility. I didn't wait on somebody to tell me I could write this book. I wrote it and then took whatever mechanisms were available to me to put that out into the public. And I think with many of the authors on BlackScienceFictionSociety.com, you all are doing that. And that site and the authors there were a big inspiration to me, because they weren't waiting. They just put it out there, and there was an audience. There are people reading it. I can remember scrolling through the site on Media Day and reading, like, some of Thaddeus's work and going, oh, my gosh, this is incredible. And he got an audience. Somebody read it other than himself. And with YouTube and, well, what's the other one I want to say? Netflix. Can you imagine that now Netflix has more Emmy nominations for their shows than some of the network shows? And look at what they're putting on there. With Orange is the New Black, that would never have gotten picked up on regular television before. You got a bunch of women in prisons, and there's a trans gender person in there, and black people, and this. I mean, there's everything in there. But that show has gotten picked up and has become one of the more critically acclaimed series on television to date, because it is what the people want to see. So I think that eventually we will move into even more of seeing our whatever we put out be equitable for ourselves. It's just I think the way things are moving, even with some of the apps that are getting put in the App Store, you know, just everyday people can put an app on the App Store now, and you can either buy it or you can leave it. I mean, just look at that. That's incredible to me that we have that kind of a platform now where, you know, 10 years before, would we have had something like that? Probably not.
No, you're right. The barrier to production is a lot lower, you know, whether you're talking publishing a book or even publishing a movie. You know, to do your own movie or your own television show, and we call it obviously a web show or a webcast, but to do your own television show now, the barrier is much, much lower. You know, the technology has made things very, very easy for creative people to get things done. And again, it still falls down to the problem of getting exposure. The cool part is that people like Netflix and Stars and a lot of these independent television outlets, you know, whether they be satellite, cable, whatever, they have learned the lesson that content is king very, very well. Content is there is no other measure, and there is no other viable circumstance about any kind of production, you know, whether it's a book, whether it's a TV, well, TV and movies, because it's the content that counts. Nothing else matters. And so you look at why there's a decline of network television. Well, there's two reasons for that. First of all, they're very, very risk averse. Nobody really wants to do something very innovative on network television because they lose their job if it doesn't work out in 2 weeks or 3 weeks or 4 weeks. Well, no, because networks are very, very, you know, they want that advertising revenue, and that's their only yardstick. But look at some of these shows that were crap that turned out to be some of the biggest shows out there. Cheers. Nobody watched Cheers for a year. MASH wasn't popular for a couple years. Hell, Fox TV, Fox News, the news division, ran in the red for 10 years. Okay, now obviously that was a political move, to get that conservative voice out there. But there are people who will wait to see if something has legs rather than killing it in the first season because they didn't get the magic number that they wanted. Mm-hmm. And so I think that when you talk about the major media outlets, you're looking at that risk aversion of going, well, I don't think we really want to have a Latino-based show with an all-Latino cast yet because, first of all, we don't think it's going to have legs, or, it may not be picked up. And here is the fastest-growing minority group, which will be the majority group in this country in the 2030s, and someone's making that short-sighted decision. If you can get Latinos to have eyeballs on your channel, even for one show, the chances are pretty good that they may actually look at the show before and the show after just because they tune it in because it's that time of the day, Mm-hmm. So when I look at the whole, I actually have to moderate a panel on Afrofuturism at Mid-Americon 2 in Kansas City. And a lot of these issues I'm going to bring up, and I'm going to try to use the nice words so that they'll invite me back. Well, why is it? Well, here's my big question. Why is it that and this is where they vote for the Hugo Awards for science fiction, worldwide science fiction, the big sci-fi award. So this is obviously a great opportunity for me because, none of them know me yet, although I think they've been looking me up on Google. If anybody wants to see something funny on Google, go ahead and put my name in and hit enter. And if you don't laugh at what you see and at the way that I'm serious, it just came up like this about a month ago. Someone else told me about it. But see now they say, oh well, this Hayashi guy, he's moderating Afrofuturism, and they go, well, what's the Japanese guy do? And then maybe they'll have some curiosity about me as a person, a writer, a content creator, or whatever. But one of my questions is, well, why does mainstream science fiction ignore, the writers of Afrofuturism, who are just as good and maybe even better than the authors that we see in the short stories in Analog and Amazing. See, I have a brain fart. Amazing. And Asimov's Science Fiction and Analog. The writers at BlackScienceFictionSociety.com have the same level of
definitely
story crafting. So
definitely.
why doesn't anybody in the larger Hugo community or even the larger mainstream sci-fi community, why don't they know about us? Okay? Why don't they know? And I'm going to ask that question. I'm going to use the polite word. I'll say, is this a matter of chauvinism or is it a genuine oversight? Because if you use the word racism, white folks get all fluttery. They don't know how to deal with that. Well, they don't, But this is a legitimate concern. So if you go and you start, let's say you do a series of 5 books, kind of in the same kind of genre, same kind. So the question you still have to face is, how do I raise this above just black eyeballs seeing what I've done?
Are you asking that to me?
Yeah. How do you, when you think about going mainstream, and I think we'd all like to be mainstream. You got Toni Morris. Toni Morris is pretty, gotten some mainstream attention. You've got, what's Tenanery's husband's name? Stephen Barnes. You've got Stephen Barnes. Mm-hmm. He wrote a bunch of the Twilight Zone episodes, and so you have a few people who have a certain amount of mainstream notice, but certainly not very many. So if you were going to be confronted with that, or whatever however you're going to map your career, I don't even know if you've given that much consideration. Have you at all? Maybe I'm putting the cart before the horse.
Well, you know what?
I'm not asking to put you on the spot. You know that,
no,
right?
You're not.
You're
not. I think that given the climate of what's been happening here recently, I think that that's a fair question. I really do. And being a person of color, I think that the question can be looked at in a couple of different ways. I went to a panel with Nate Parker not too long ago. He had a movie out called Beyond the Light, which was, a love story, really, that dealt around music. And one of his quips was that, they'll never get me to play Superman. But in the same breath, he turns around and puts out Birth of a Nation, and it gets picked up for the biggest price, I think, of any film in existence at Sundance. He just made his own film.
Right.
For me, growing up in America, I remember black people being all over TV, There was this Cosby Show, and he was America's favorite dad. Of course, he's had quite a bit of, Cosby has had quite a bit of controversy and some scandals here in the last couple of years.
Right.
But when I was growing up, he was America's favorite dad. We had...
Hey, I got to play tennis with him.
Yes. I mean, there was nothing like the Cosby Show for anybody, regardless of what. And we had Teen Summit. There was the Oprah Show that everybody watched. I mean, she was like a female god on television, right?
Absolutely.
There was the Fresh Prince of Bel-Air that everybody watched. And then if you take it a step further and look at Nickelodeon, my brother and I used to watch something called Snick. It made our weekend. That's how we unwound after a week of school. And my parents would cook us up, cool food was what we would call it, whatever little junk we wanted, sandwiches, pizza, tacos, some cool food that we could have that wasn't as strictly nutritious as what we got through the week. And they would buy us drinks and snacks and different things like that to enjoy ourselves. And what composed Snick would be Clarissa Explains It All, and then there was a show called Roundhouse. And Roundhouse didn't last very long, but Roundhouse was kids of all races, colors, whatever, hip-hopping it, pop-locking it and singing in the whole nine. And then after they took Roundhouse off, it was replaced with All That. And All That, I don't know if y'all were familiar with that, but All That was a show like a sketch comedy, kind of like a youth version of In Living Color.
Okay.
And so All That would have musical guests to come on at the end. And my brother and I were laughing about this just a couple of weeks ago, that we can't remember a single artist coming on that show that wasn't African American. And there's a bunch of white kids down in the audience, or so-called white kids, laughing and screaming and hollering, and jumping up and down for these quote-unquote urban artists. And
right.
So, scientifically, we made race up. At least that's what all the scientists show. And when you go in the classroom, it's never more evident than it is there. Now, you can't necessarily, if you look at what's going on in the news now, that's a hard concept to understand because it's evident, and especially with the things that have been happening with the shootings and the loss of life. But if you, take a step back from that and just look at culture itself, we just enjoy good product. Look at Empire. Everybody watched Empire. They still do. Everybody wants to say it took a little dip in the ratings as they were trying to figure out how to deal with the show as it kind of took legs. But everybody watched that. If you look at Scandal, everybody watched Scandal when it first came out. And I don't mean literally everybody, but you understand it had that huge audience.
It had legs, as they say.
It had legs. Shonda Rhimes is like a mega monster in creating television shows, just putting How to Get Away with Murder on and having that actress who is extremely talented to sit there and take off all her makeup and her wig and you know, a lot of black people are like, oh, my gosh, did she just really do that? But, yes, she did, and everybody watched it.
Right.
Everybody, and still do watch that show. And it's phenomenal writing. It's phenomenal acting. It's phenomenal everything. It's
it kind of takes us back.
Everybody watches it.
It takes us back to the days of Dynasty in terms of seeing something new, having an engaging show. Man, I used the crap out of that show. I would roll up on a woman in the bar and go, hey, you know, I'm sorry to bother you, but I missed Dynasty last night. Could you tell me what happened? And I was off to the races. I used to do that with all my children too. I would, but what you say about the way people are drawn to quality entertainment, almost regardless of who's on the show. If it's a great story and it's entertaining, people will watch it. Excuse me. And so when you look at the bigger spectrum of entertainment, you know, one of the things that happened was, I think it was in November of last year, a study was released on how much movies made with non-white actors in them in more than just a, you know, that's the waiter kind of role. And they found out that from a financial perspective, the movies that had a more diverse cast made more money.
Absolutely.
And so there, but that makes sense to you, and that makes sense to me. But these risk-averse studio guys in Hollywood, you know, they will only do what has been done before. Okay, you know, that's look at all of the reboot movies that we're seeing. You know, what do we have? We have reboot movies and comic books. Okay.
But you know what? And I would say this. My main aim with my first book was honoring the memory of my grandmother and tackling impossibilities. So when we're looking at television now, it doesn't matter what these big studio heads want. Blackish has been one of the most Emmy-nominated shows this year. I think I just heard that on the news. Blackish. Like, people of color are everywhere. What is the show, Off the Boat? Is that the name of it, Fresh Off the Boat?
I don't know. I'm not allowed to watch TV because – no, I'm not. Because, you know, let me tell you how stupid my ass is. I gave up cable TV in 2001 when I started writing my first book. Because let me tell you how stupid I am. If I have a movie channel, then when I'm in the house, I have to be in front of the TV watching that movie channel because I'm paying extra for it. This is just how my stupid mind works. And so I'm sitting there and I'm going, how many times this month are you going to watch Rambo with your dumbass self? And the stupid part of me goes, well, I'm going to watch it every time it's on because I'm paying for it. And that made no sense. So I actually just gave up cable TV because I'm stupid. You know, I don't know if it's like an addictive personality or whatever, but somehow, or it's like my grandfather who said, well, you know, don't waste your money. You know, if you're going to spend money on something, be sure it's something that you're going to use or that it's worth it or whatever. And the most worthless thing you can spend money on is a movie channel on cable, unless it's carrying something that you like. Like, look at all the people who like Game of Thrones. You know, you can't argue with that popularity and the amount of money that represents. But so I don't get to watch TV except what I will download later. You know, like I'm watching a couple. I like Doctor Who, so I watch Doctor Who. I like The Last Ship because I like military stuff. So I watch. You know, I download that. The Walking Dead because I like to see white people getting eaten by dead people because they were stupid. You know, Fear the Walking Dead. That show jumped the shark last. I'm sorry if I see Ruben Blades. I'm going to apologize to him, even though he's dead and not on the show. I'll say, look, man, I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it. But the fact of the matter is, you make more money as a studio. You make more money as a media company if you have a diverse cast. So when you see all these shows that don't have any diversity in them, you have to wonder, why is that? You know?
Well,
and
mm-hmm.
Go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, go ahead. No, I forgot what I was going to say now.
It's fascinating to watch. I love your questions. And I think that there's no other audience that's better suited to kind of to deal with this than you are at BlackScienceFictionSociety.com. I think the content there is amazing. Their community there is amazing. And I think you're defying the odds every time somebody publishes a story online. We've seen my kids deal with Wattpad, right? They will go on Wattpad to read a story quicker than they will check out anything in our library. I don't think that we have the capacity to understand how much media consumption and good storytelling and television and all of these things are changing because it's so fast. You can go on YouTube and put your things there, and regardless of whether the big studios want to put you there, you are going to get seen. East Willie B is a show that I watch on YouTube with an all-Latin cast, and it has views where it wouldn't necessarily get picked up on NBC or ABC, and maybe it will. Like I said, Issa Rae show, Awkward Black Girl, is right there on YouTube where we can get picked up. I think David Banner made some type of a science fiction-y, and he's a rapper. When I saw that, I was like, oh, my gosh, way to step outside the box. And I saw it on YouTube, and it got transmitted through Facebook.
Go ahead. No, go ahead. Well, I've interviewed people, the Body Jumpers people, the cast even, these very successful black sci-fi series, and they do it because they know if they're persistent and they have enough episodes and the quality is good and the storytelling is good, they will bust out. And that's my feeling too. So again, that goes back to the bar being lower to actually getting your stuff produced. And I think that goes back to you saying, well, if you're persistent and if you're going to, keep putting yourself out there, eventually you will probably be seen. Eventually you will be seen because people will notice,
I do think that, and to go back to some of your arguments, I think they're extremely interesting. But you got to look at people who have defied the odds before us. Again, taking it back to that science fiction of just being African American in America. You're looking at all of the artists in the soul movement. And anytime you watch a movie from the 1960s or that's set in the 1960s, you'll hear that soul music, from African American people. And my dad is a musician. He writes music and he produces music. So does my brother. And I remember when he's going through like the building elements of building his studio, one of the things that he would tell me is that, you're listening to an Aretha Franklin track, and when you're listening to it, you are thinking, oh, my gosh, she's blowing me away with this sound. But she has one take to get this right because they're being snuck in the back of the studio, by some janitor. They're stealing studio time. They're going through all of these methods to get this studio time because of segregation, and the times would not allow them to go record, with the freedom that everyone else could. But look at what happens. Does everybody not listen to Aretha? Of course they do. She defied it because I think that she sang from a point, a part of her heart and soul, which is why they call it soul music. So it transcends any obstacles that are put in its path. So as for me and kind of looking at how do you break out of whatever box you're in, I don't even think about the box. I just do my best to make the best work that I can. Do I speak on certain issues if my heart tells me to? I have a blog right now that I wrote about the Flint situation, but that was on my heart. It was from a place of inspiration, and I'm even tinkering with putting it to music and just trying different things to be as creative as I can with my message. And I think that like you said, eventually, if the work is good enough, I think it'll catch.
And you know, the other thing is a lot of us have a longevity that nobody ever expected. When you talk about Aretha Franklin, you're talking about a pretty significant career because you know what? As recently as 5 years ago, they wrote her off. They said, oh, she's not going to live any longer. She's past her prime. She's never going to, blah, blah, blah. And then, just last year, she sang A Natural Woman at Kennedy Center, during that honors thing, and just tore it up.
Yeah.
Look at some of our artists who has been around as long as Stevie Wonder. What is he now, 130, 131?
Stevie Wonder is the walking embodiment of science fiction in any capacity. He's blind, he can see, and he has been able to pull audiences together with that same time. I can't see anything but how good this sounds.
Well, how about and Smokey Robinson? I know he's got to be close to 140 years old. So I'm kidding, of course, but I mean, I went and saw him 2 or 3 years ago over in Indiana. I don't like going to Indiana because of the time change thing. Like when it's noon here in Chicago, it's 1959 in Indiana. So it's that time change messes me up. But I went and saw him, and he did a 2-hour show. Smokey Robinson is a little bit older, let's be honest. But that's the other thing. A lot of our skill sets transcend. It just transcends the normal. Look at our actors. Look at Sidney Poitier. Look how long he was in movies. His partner in crime, Harry Belafonte. Same thing. And look how good. Oh man. I don't want to even talk about that because that's really sexist. So I'm going to behave. But look at look at the women, the older women actresses who put in their time. Ossie Davis. Yeah. He practically died right after he did that episode of The L Word. He's in a lesbian-based TV show and just tore it up. He and Pam Grier. So, not only are we talented, but we stand the test of time. And you know why that happens? Because we have to put up too much BS to start out with. So, when people ask me, and they do ask me, I'm half black, I'm half Japanese. I live in kind of two worlds. I'm happy with it. I'm well accustomed to it. I got jokes. But the fact of the matter is when I look at, what is my legacy going to be? Well, I don't know. People say I'm a great writer. Well, okay, I take them at their word. But how is that going to translate into, will I be discovered? Well, I have a good chance next month. I'm going to be at Mid-Americon 2. I'm going to be moderator for 3 panels. And so all of a sudden, now I'm going to be in front of all of these people. These are the people who decide the Hugos. They're all there to kiss each other's butts, to pat each other on the back, to talk about how great writers they are. And I'm going to go in there and I'm going to say, I got a better story than all of you wrote. And you know what? You never heard of it. You know why? Because Afrofuturism and black science fiction is not a thing with you people. And I'm here to talk about it, and I'm here to wonder why. I'm going to ask, why do you think that is? Is it backlash? Because we have a huge cultural backlash that we've experienced because Barack Obama got elected. Folks don't want to talk about black stuff. You got too many small-minded white people who are out there thinking that their built-in white privilege was evaporating because we elected, by landslide, a half-black president. You have all of this nonsense that's going on in this country. And you have to ask yourself, WTF? When are we going to start looking at things for the absolute value of what they bring to the culture, the absolute value of, what can help people, what can help their imagination, what gives kids the permission to imagine or to believe, just like what you wrote. Could I be president? Hell yeah, you can be president. But until we get rid of You know, and Oprah, I love her to death. She smells great, by the way, just in case y'all haven't smelled her. She smells great. But well, man, you want to talk, I don't know what kind of perfume it was. I don't know that she smelled great. But Oprah said, in order for America to move forward, we have to wait for them to die. Now, normally I would agree with her, but the problem is, you know, these very, very sick, selfish, fearful individuals are passing that on to their kids. Okay? And so that's, you know, and then now we have whole state education systems that don't teach jack. They teach nothing. Oh, we can't have sex education because you know, they don't have a good reason anymore. Oh, if we teach sex education, then kids are going to have sex. There was a study that came out. When did it come out?
Mm-hmm.
Probably 1975, 76, 77, around then. And it was a longitudinal study about teenage sexuality. And what it concluded was sex hasn't changed, and the first sexual experience and what have you has not changed for 50,000 years.
Nope.
And yet you still have people behaving like it's some sort of treating it like voodoo or, you know, a bad disease or something. You know, our kids are not well adjusted. You know, you've got racists in Texas trying to eliminate slavery out of our textbooks.
Well, I will say this. Because I am an educator within public education, both high school and college. I will say this. The first place that a child is going to learn those types of cultural norms is in the home. That's the first place that they get adjusted. And as a teacher, I can speak honestly to this. I have to go through and get through all of that a lot of times before I can start a lesson. Have you eaten?
Okay.
What did you see before you got on the bus this morning? Why are you willing to cuss me out at 7:15 in the morning and we just got through saying the Pledge of Allegiance? Like, I have to get through all of that stuff before we can even get to where to put this comma in the sentence.
Wow.
If you want them to learn properly about their sexuality, how to express that, how to be responsible with that, they are looking at you. How do you handle this? I had some situations in the classroom this year with boyfriends and girlfriends and so on and so forth, and you know what the underlying cause was? What my mama did, what she did with her boyfriend, what my daddy is not doing with, you know, my mom as opposed to his ex-girl. That's what they're looking at. They're not looking at each other. It's not the media. All of that has an influence, I would argue, but it's not the media in the equation. We go back to my story. My mom put a pencil in my hand at 3. She was giving me her college anthropology textbook at 6 because I was messy. I would always be doing something around the house. I guess any 6-year-old does, right? I guess any of them do. But I can remember watching this show called Mr. Wizard. I don't know if y'all remember that. But Mr. Wizard would come on, and he would do all these science projects. So I'm wandering around the house, you know, sneaking cups from the you know, cupboard or from the shelves and putting alcohol and candy in little cups to see what it would do. My mom was like, here, take this book, whatever words you don't know, look them up. I'm like, this book is like 9 million pages long to a 6-year-old. But what she was doing was instilling in me a sense of sit down, have some decorum about yourself, have the discipline to sit here and get through this book and look up the words, and I'm holding you accountable for that. My mom did that. My dad would teach me what values I had in society. He was constantly preaching to my brother and I, constantly. My grandmother took me on the porch, and we would sit on the porch or the patio of my house. We call it a porch because I'm from the South. So we sit on the porch. And she had like 1 billion of these old envelopes. I don't know where she got these from, but she had 1 billion of these old envelopes. And we would sit and we would have a contest to see who could count the most cards. And when we got through sitting on the porch, she would look at her envelope, and if she had 36 and I had 45, then I would win. And there wasn't an actual prize there, but it was just the experience of doing it. And while we were sitting on the porch, my grandmother and I, she's telling me stories of what it is to be a female, what it is to be a lady, what it is to run a household, what it is, like she told me a long time ago that I'm finding to be true now. A woman's work is never done. What does it look like to fall in love, to get married? Just, you know, stories of my lineage. So when I go into school, and I've been through mostly private schools my whole life where I was always sitting in the seat of the other. I was, you know, the only black or the only that did this, or even when I went to all African-American school briefly, or predominantly, I should say, I didn't talk like everybody else. I've always sat in that seat of the other. I was able to stay as grounded as I was because of that foundation that came from the home. If you want to fix the schools, you've got to fix what's going on in those houses. Period.
Yeah. Well, you know, obviously education is different. Kids are very distracted. They're not taught the same way that they were taught when I was a kid. You know, test scores have gone down, you know, for various reasons. I mean, a lot of reasons. There's a lot of different reasons. Education is tough because it's not. There's no there's no silver bullet for fixing our schools. That's the problem. And to try, I mean, in this country, the government, the people who run this country have no buy-in to having a smart populace. You know, they would have us as stupid as possible. As a matter of fact, you know, No Child Left Behind was designed by Teddy Kennedy and I forget what Republican, but it was a funded mandate. Well, what the government did after Teddy was dead was they imposed No Child Left Behind with no money attached to it so that they could use zero-tolerance strategies on underperforming schools. So if your school wasn't performing well, they could just yank your funding, and to hell with you. And so you look at the specs, you look at what No Child Left Behind was supposed to leave a child with in terms of education. Essentially, the way it ended up was it was designed to make kids just smart enough to bake change at McDonald's. Okay? And so another thing that I'm kind of curious, have you thought about, is one of the things that I've realized is I try to do some outreach, I try to do some writing seminars, I try to help kids in school think in terms of being creative, because I believe that we have to build, we have to create, we have to grow our own customers, okay? And so being able to translate what we know and what we've done and the, you know, the essence of creativity and yes you can, all of that together is in our best interest so that we have customers who want what we do, and then in turn we can help them build their own customer base, their own readers and their own, you know, moviegoers and things like that. So this is, I mean, the whole gestalt of the American experience is such a pain in the butt to have to look at in terms of trying to fix anything. Well, it is. I mean, here's what we've done. We have turned this country into basically the closest that we've been to slavery since the 1860s, because you know we're taking away collective bargaining, we're taking away, you know, reasonable social service programs that help keep our people healthy, fed, things like that, and it's all for the benefit of, you know, this is what's so sad that most people don't know. Everything that our government has been involved with, especially under Republican administrations, is to the benefit of 400 families in this country.
You know
some
what?
people are going to say, William, you are crazy. William, you don't know what you're talking about. No, William knows what he's talking about. The entire Republican Party is designed to further enrich 400 families in this country. And I'll give you the biggest proof. I hate doing politics because I know too much about it and it makes me too angry. But I think it was in 2006, under George W., Congress passed a change to the IRS tax code.
Mm-hmm.
And this one change, you know what it did? It cut the taxes that the Walton family that owns Walmart and Sam's Club,
mm-hmm.
this one change in the tax code cut their taxes by either $600 or $800 million.
Mm-hmm.
One law passed for one family to do that. So when you have that sort of thing going on and you're looking around at your schools, especially you, and I take care of an elementary school here, but when you look at education where so many of our problems start and so many of our problems can be solved, it's tough. It's tough to do anything without money. It's tough to do anything without support.
Here's what I would say to that, and maybe
okay.
I'm a glass half full kind of person. Maybe that's the case. But every year I am graded by how many of my students are growing according to standardized test scores.
Sure.
I understand probably better than anybody or just as well as anybody what a standardized test means because my salary and my livelihood is directly attached to it. I've been in some of the, some schools where it's like I was watched to get a piece of construction paper. You understand? I've been in those types of schools, and I understand. And I was able to get the highest rating of any of that is possible. In my state, they rate them from 1 to 5. A 5, you grow a kid more than a year in your classroom. So if they sit there, maybe they grow 2 years, maybe they grow 3 or more. I have been able to do that consistently for the past 3-4 years that I've been teaching that particular age group because I don't look at the impossibility. Again, I just don't consider it. They tell me the statistics of what it is when the kids walk in the door, and what can I do about it? I have to teach what gets off the bus. We are going to have to get to the possibility to where we are considering things that are not possible. The kids that I teach will work jobs that haven't been created yet. We're not living in the same society to where people work 30 and 40 years at a job where you have to, work your way up to a certain point to get $1 million. I know a kid right now in my high school that plays video games all day. His videos get 10 million hits per video. He's probably making more money for playing a video game than I make for teaching an entire year. It's just it's not the same paradigm anymore. The
That's
kids
true.
will learn if you inspire them. Because what does the old adage tell us? They will never forget how you make them feel. I have had kids sit down at this test and tell me, I'm doing this for you, Miss Goodman. I'm doing it for you. And try their absolute best because they understand the culture that we've built in that classroom. You want your kids to learn, let them be creative. They don't like books, find a way to get the book to them in a different way. Find a different book. Like you said, we have saturated this society with so many things to be read and seen and heard. Try just a different avenue. One of the things that I let my kids do when I come into the classroom is have a few minutes where I put on some nice music and just let them write or draw. That's what I love. They love it. It's quiet.
Right.
And somebody comes in, they're like, you got music playing? Absolutely. It plays all the time. Mm-hmm. And I've had kids, will play some Michael Jackson today. And I'm like, well, if you don't get crazy on me, if you're not bouncing off the walls, I'll play some Michael Jackson. 10 minutes. And what that does is it defragments their brain. It just helps them to relax a little and gives them a moment to catch their breath, and then we can get on with the business of the day. We have to have people that are not looking at this thing like we are manufacturing slaves ready to go out to I don't know, just become enslaved in whatever society we're building. We are building a global society. It's no longer just the United States that we're looking at. And I tell my students that all the time. You guys can have a conversation and see the person that you're talking to in Thailand. I'm not training you to get up in the morning every morning and go work at Verizon unless that's what you want to do. Imagine a job for yourself that we haven't figured out yet.
Yeah.
Simple.
And all of that is so critical and seems to be not a priority for very many people. We're trying to make 350 to 500 tech jobs. We're trying to build a computer and 3D printer manufacturing plant. And people go, well, why would you do that? What if Dell wants to buy you out? And I'll go, well, it's not about making the computers. What it's about is 350 tech jobs that are good enough for you to either get a house or get a car. To pay your bills. We want to bring pocket manufacturing back to this country, but in order to do that, we also have to have the people who can take those jobs. So it's kind of a two-step process. I don't want to talk. I don't want to take up all of that, but let me ask you this one thing. Mm-hmm. What was we let's circle back to you. Okay.
Yeah.
What?
Yes.
We talked about what the best part of what you figured out in terms of, creating your own book and getting it published. If you had to think about what was the worst part of you having to go through that process, have you identified something in your mind, the part that you could have, A, really avoided, or B, you want to make damn sure it doesn't happen again? What were the drawbacks to you sitting down, writing the book, getting it published, getting it edited, all of those things?
I would say that one of the biggest drawbacks for me, number one, was I waited a little bit too long to ask for help.
That's okay. That's important. Yeah.
I think that as writers and creative beings that we are so protective over our project that we are scared to let anybody else read it, to let anybody else near it, and to ask them, well, how did you do this? And what was your methods? And, how did this work out for you? And I think that I waited a little bit too long to ask for help. Number two, the thing that I would take into this next project is to relax a little bit more and not try to force things to happen before they're supposed to happen. I would be a lot more patient in the process. And if it takes 3 weeks more than I wanted it to, then it just takes 3 weeks more than I wanted it to. With the first book, I was like, oh, my gosh, I was, locked into this date at this time. And, when it finally came out, it was smooth sailing. And I thought to myself, if I had to just relax and let, once I've done what I'm supposed to do, and if I can just relax and enjoy this process, it's going to come to be eventually anyway. So those are the two things that I would tell people who have any kind of project out there, or you work any kind of job or whatever it is you're doing. Do not be afraid. If you know somebody, like, let me get some help with this. Like, how did you do this?
Right.
And just be patient with yourself.
Wow. I know some writers who don't ask for help because they're afraid someone's going to steal all their ideas.
Well, that's what we got copyrights for. And
that's true.
And I think that we learned a huge and important lesson with making your work trademark with Prince. I think that that's some of the incredible work that he did while he was with us here on the planet. And I think that one thing that I think we can learn from rappers, right, is that you have some of that work that is for the public discourse. I think that in 15, 20 years, they'll probably be teaching a class on Drake at Princeton or Harvard because he was a nobody. Nobody knew who Drake was. Are you kidding me? He was a little wheelchair boy. And what's the name of that show? It escapes me at the moment. I just was thinking about it. Aubrey Graham. You understand what he was a soap opera boy. Somebody, a rapper? Are you kidding me? Again, that idea of something impossible. What was the name? It's going to drive me crazy now. But anyway, he was Degrassi. That's the name of the show. He was a soap opera boy on Degrassi, right? But what did he do? He took every remix, every little song he could find, and he went in that studio and he rapped over them, and he put it out to the public for free. And he
but it got his name out there.
Yes.
It got his name out there.
People began to look for the next Drake song, and the next Drake song, because he was able to get himself nominated for a Grammy without even having an album out.
Mm-hmm.
I think he has changed, and some of these independent places and people and situations are changing the way we think about creating and thinking about where this audience is.
Right.
And I think that even if we look at a show like Mr. Robot, which I don't know if you're familiar with, but I love that show. I binge watched it on spring break.
Uh-huh.
Oh, my gosh. You got two Middle Eastern, well, they're not Middle, African. Sam Ismail is Egyptian, and the lead character in the show, Rami Malek, is also Egyptian. The cast is completely diverse, something you never thought you'd see on TV. It's one of the most critically acclaimed shows on the television network. It's a sleeper show. Nobody expected it. Nobody saw it coming, and it's just good, just flat-out good material. And now everybody's like, where's Mr. Robot? And he gets his money from being anti-social media. So I think it's just all about how much creativity you have and how much you're willing to invest in yourself to build your brand, to know your brand, and to be true to whatever it is that you want to do. So when I sit down to write a story or a blog, I go by what I feel in my heart or what has inspired me to sit down and write that. And I'm not really thinking about, is a black person going to read this or is a white person going to read this? I may be deliberate in making the characters look like me and sound like me because I am the artist that creates them. But I want everybody to read it. I want the audience to kind of look like what it looks like in my classroom or whatever the case may be. And,
in real life, as they say.
Yes. In real life. How do we get to the point have you seen the National Geographic of what we're supposed to look like in America in 2050, I think it is, which is not even that far away. Nobody knows.
2030 is when, in the 2030s is when whites are scheduled to become a minority.
Look at that.
And I think that has a lot to do with a lot of the violence that we're seeing on the street today. But I'm going to have to stop because I don't want to talk about that right now. Plus, we've run out of time. Chasitie, thank you very much. I mean, we got 1 minute left, and Jarvis still has to do his thing. Now, let me ask you. I'm going to ask you in front of everybody. That didn't feel like 2 hours, did it?
Wow, no, that was fast.
Good.
It was enjoyable. Thank you.
That's one of the seminars that I'll be leading at Mid-America-Con on how to do interviews. So I'm going to have to. I don't know if somebody's going to be grabbing my stuff and playing it or what, but I definitely want to be good at this. But anyway, thank you for being here.
Fantastic.
I want to thank you for having written the book. And for those of you who are looking for it, it's on Amazon or other places, and it's called "Could I Really Be President?" by Chasitie Goodman, and she spells her first name Chasitie. Goodman, regular Goodman. And she's due to be popping some more books out. When do you think your next one will be out, by the way?
I'm going to ride the wave of this one a little bit longer, and because I have one in production right now, actually. So, I don't want to get too rigid on time, but soon.
It'll be out when it's ready. It'll be out when it's ready.
We don't want to rush it too much.
All right.
Yes,
well, thank you very much for being here. Oh, no, it was my pleasure. It really was. Just hang on after we stop the show in case anybody has any last-minute questions for you, okay?
Thank you so much. It's been a pleasure. Thank you.
All right. And Jarvis, take it away. Oh, see, he's unmuted. I don't know what's going on with his phone. Are you there, man?
You gotta wait on him to get in.
Yeah. He must have had something happen to his phone. Well, anyway, I want to thank everybody out there. I want to thank you for listening to this show, both live and as a podcast. I want to thank everybody who helps make this possible, the people who support BlackScienceFictionSociety.com. Excuse me, those of you who put up with me week after week after week after week. And and I'm not sure who we're going to have next week. Hopefully we'll be able to let you know a little bit more ahead of time. But tune in live. This show is live at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, followed around the clock. It's simultaneous in every time zone. And I want to thank everybody for all they do to help make things successful both here and at the BlackScienceFictionSociety.com. And on behalf of Jarvis, who is experiencing technical difficulties, and Chasitie Goodman, I want to wish everybody a good day. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you.